Hey, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a great start to your Wednesday. It's beautiful and sunny and warm, but meanwhile in Jerusalem, they're having a rare event. It's not very often that the holy city of Jerusalem gets snow. In fact, if you remember, it was 5 or 10 years ago, they had a picture of people at the Kotel with umbrellas full of snow. It's a beautiful, serene time when Jerusalem gets snow. And tonight, Jerusalem will be blanketed with snow, the white, beautiful, fluffy snow that we're so used to in Boston, and we will be getting more tomorrow in Boston. In any case, I wanted to touch on an idea in this week's Torah portion. The holiest thing, talking about Jerusalem, the holiest place in Jerusalem was the temple. What was the holiest place in the temple? The Holy of Holies. What was the holiest thing in the Holy of Holies, and the holiest thing in Judaism, period, is the Holy Ark, the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark that housed within it the tablets, the 2 tablets, the Torah that Moses wrote, the Tzinsenet Haman, the little container of Monday they preserved for generations, the broken tablets. When King David went to war, when the Jews went in and out of war, the Ark always went with them. That's why today when we open up the Ark to take out the Torahs, what do we sing? Vayehi ben Soah Aaron Bayom Moshe. We talk about the Holy Ark. What was the Ark made of? So we have a very interesting instruction in this week's Torah portion about how the Ark should be made. The Torah tells us that the Ark should be made of acacia wood, but it should be coated from within and from without with gold. Mibayis and michutz, from the inside and the outside, I had to have gold. So what did the Jews do to fulfill this commandment from the Torah? They built 3 boxes. The outer box was pure gold. The inner box was also pure gold. And the middle box was made out of acacia wood. So they put a box of gold, and inside that they put a box of acacia wood, and inside that they put a box of gold. So therefore they had 3 boxes, but they fulfilled the biblical commandment of having gold on both sides and acacia wood in the middle. But the question is why? What's the message? What's the Torah telling us by telling us you need to have acacia wood on the outside, acacia wood on the inside, gold on both sides, yet on the inside you need wood. There's a very powerful message, a spiritual message here that the Rebbe teaches us. And he says like this: first, in order to understand the commandment of the Torah and its relevance to us, because the Ark is the holiest thing. So if the Torah signifies that it needs to be gold on the outside and inside, and wood on the gold on the outside and inside, and wood in the middle, then there's a message to us. What's unique about gold? You see, everything in the world, metal rusts, ideas rust, wood rots. Things as great as they are and as powerful and strong as they are, things don't last forever. You have a home, you build cabinets. In 10 years, you're going to have to change them because everything in this world has an expiration date. And one of the greatest and most powerful things that have expiration dates are human beings, right? We get old. Age robs us of our youth, of our strength, of our capability. Try to run up a staircase when you're 20 years old, and try to run up a staircase when you're 60 years old. It's the reality of life. It's one of our challenges. Things don't last forever. However, there's one exception, very few exceptions, but one of the exceptions is gold. In fact, just a few years ago, Israel continues to find these gold coins that date back thousands of years. They once found off of the shores of Caesarea, they found tons of gold, the biggest finding of gold that lasted over 1,000 years. You look at the gold coins, and they're still there. They're still the same condition as they were 1,000 years ago. Doesn't happen with everything else, but with gold it happens. And the message is like this. You see, ideas come and go, but the Torah is eternal. It's there forever. It lasts. It's just like gold. It can be hidden under the water for 1,000 years, but then when you grab it out, it's still fresh and new. The Torah, sometimes we submerge it in our own ocean and our own sea. We forget about who we are, what we are supposed to be. But ultimately, that Torah stays eternal, stays fresh the whole time. It doesn't rot. We've gone through, you had the Enlightenment movement, the Industrial movement, you had the ancient Greeks, you had the Romans, you had every idea, every ideology, every idolatry, it all came and went. But Torah lasts forever. You know, yesterday I was walking on the ocean, taking a little walk, and this guy comes over to me. He sees me with my yarmulke, and he sees me with my tzitzis and my beard, and he can see I'm a Jewish guy. And he comes over to me and says, you know, how are you? And he starts talking to me. He was a religious man. And he says, you know why I love you and I respect you so much? And I said, why? He says, because you guys believe in one God, in monotheism, not in the Trinity, but in one God. And I thought to myself, think about the eternity. Abraham brought the idea of one God. The Torah teaches us about the idea of Shabbos, of moral values, of spiritual values. These things never go stale. It's like gold. And that's why the commandment the Torah gives us is that when you build the ark, you have to have gold on the inside and the outside. You have to remember that the Torah and the ark don't change. They stay fresh the whole time. You know the story about this town where they had a big clock in the center of the town. It was very tall. And basically people would come by the center of the town and they would see the clock and then they would check their own clocks, and if their own clocks were wrong, they would adjust it. One day there was a meeting, you know, it was a shtetl, and they had an issue. Everyone's looking to changing it. Why is it so tall, this clock? Every time I go by the center, people say we have to look up and look at this clock. Why can't we have the clock lowered? So they took a vote and a second vote and a third vote, and they decided to lower the clock. But guess what happened? As they lowered the clock, people would come by and they would look at the clock, and they would look at their clock and they see it was different. Instead of changing their clock, they changed the clock in the town. And one guy changed it this way, the next guy changed it that way. After a week, it was broken. The message is like this. Certain things can't be changed and certain shouldn't be changed. The Torah is like gold. But there's one problem with gold. Gold is lifeless. It doesn't have that vitality. It doesn't have that life. You ever put a wood floor in your house, you know, and when it's humid, it expands. When it's cold, it contracts. Even when you cut a piece of wood off of the tree, there's a certain vitality of life there. The Torah says that the ark that represents the Torah has to be gold on the inside and the outside. It never changes. It's eternal. But you also need wood. You need to be alive in your Judaism. You need to be full of vitality, full of inspiration, full of joy, full of exuberance in your relationship with God. It can't be stale. It can't be lifeless. If your whole connection to God, to Torah, is lifeless, then you're missing the point. Yes, you need gold on the outside and the inside, then you need wood in the middle. You know, someone once came to the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement. He said, I don't understand the Hasidim. They go out to the woods and they pray and they dance and they sing and they're so joyful. What's going on here? And the Baal Shem Tov gave him an analogy. He says there was once this musician who was a very talented musician, but he was not famous. And he came to this town. He sat down in the middle of the town. He took out his violin and he started playing. It was exquisite. It was beautiful. And slowly, crowds started gathering and people started listening more and more. And after a little while, one guy came over, and he was a deaf guy, and he didn't understand what's going on. He says, what's everyone crazy? What are they standing here and listening? What's going on here? Because he was deaf, he couldn't hear. It says the Baal Shem Tov, Chassidim, they dance, they sing, they're enjoying because they see the music of this world, the music of nature, the music of the gift that God has given us, the world that we live in, the trees, the sun, the clouds, the rainbows. If someone doesn't hear, if someone's deaf to that, it's not the Chassidim's fault. And that's the message of the Holy Ark. The Ark was the holiest thing in Judaism. And the message the Ark gives us is that first of all, we have to be coded.